Recently, there's been a big trend in mobile gaming. Free, easy to make, poorly developed, ad-riddled cash grabs. With every ad you get for another awful mobile game, it seems more and more like the glory days of mobile gaming are over, and the era of lazy development for the sake of easy money is here to stay. But for now, let's cast our minds back to 2014, when a small indie game named Monument Valley was released. A game that nailed the balance between quick and casual mobile gaming and beautiful art, design, and storytelling. First, let's talk gameplay. Monument Valley's gameplay is the definition of less is more, with the game's simple controls perfectly complementing the puzzles that it presents to the player. The character you play is a princess named Ida, represented as a small black and white figure. To move her, you simply tap somewhere and she will move to that location as long as there is a clear path. The majority of the puzzles in the game involve making it so that Ida is able to move, by creating a path for her to follow. The game takes place in a variety of large structures, which can be manipulated in a variety of ways. The first is the wheel, which can be rotated to move certain parts of a structure. Then there are two different types of buttons, ones that make a permanent change once stepped on, and ones that are only activated when Ida is standing on them or another force is being applied. Finally, there are these circles that stick out of certain elements that can be held and used to move that part of the structure. For the rest of the video, I'll be referring to these as sliders, as I'm not really sure what else to call them. The game controls beautifully and makes solving puzzles enjoyable, yet easy for the puzzles to increase in difficulty as the game progresses. It's no secret that graphically this game is incredible. It has a simple, flat graphical style reminiscent of that game company's classic Journey, or games that have released since, such as Abzu or Lara Croft Go. Monument Valley takes heavy inspiration from the artwork of MC Escher, famous for his drawings of impossible staircases and contorted geometry. Similarly, many of these structures in the game are seemingly impossible, with platforms that connect to each other despite being in completely different places, and areas where you can walk on the sides of walls or even upside down. Every level provides a unique challenge whilst also offering a wide variety of locations, each beautiful in their own way, and each with their own unique color palette. In fact, I would argue that color is just as important in this game as geometry. The vibrant colors complement the locations and the structures perfectly, and when the game takes away the color, it usually is to provide emphasis to an important part of the story. I guess that my main point here is that the game is beautiful. Every single frame looks like it could be hung on a wall as a piece of art. In fact, when I first played this game a long time ago, I took a ton of screenshots just to use as wallpapers. This game knows this too, and has a built-in camera mode, as well as prompting you to take a screenshot at the end of each level. The game has a sense of loneliness, as though these structures have been long abandoned, which adds to the sense of awe you feel as you progress through each of the levels. Another important element of Monument Valley is music. Not only does it have a serene, calming soundtrack, but music also plays into the game's mechanics. Most of the actions you take will trigger musical notes, which can be played in sequence. This adds an extra level of depth to each action you take, providing an auditory response to everything you do. Anyways, now that I've introduced you to some of the core elements, let's talk about the game itself. The game opens with a small grey structure in the middle of a vast, dark space. There is a wheel on the side of the structure, and by turning it, you move the once vertical column to connect to a path to the top. This level is incredibly simple, but introduces how the game uses perspective tricks and impossible geometry, as well as introducing one of the first gameplay mechanics, the wheel. Once Ida has walked to the plinth at the top, we get the game's title screen, before being taken to the main menu. The second level introduces more colour than the first, and also introduces a second mechanic, buttons. Ida has to step on two buttons to move the central rotating platform up and complete the level. The third level is where things get a little more interesting. We're introduced to the slider mechanic between these two towers. Once Ida makes her way to the top, she enters a doorway, which returns her to the strange monochrome area from the first level. At the top of this new structure stands a blue figure with a speech bubble above their head. This character appears pretty frequently throughout the game, and it's the main way in which the game's story is told. They aren't given a name, however, so I'll be referring to them as the Queen. The Queen questions why Ida has come to this place, before a new structure rises above her. Getting to the top allows you to complete the level. Level 4 is one of my favourite levels in the game. The use of colour really pops out, especially in the water, which subtly reflects the structures above. Level 4 essentially applies all of the mechanics that you've learned so far in a more complex setting, making use of perspective tricks, wheels, sliders, and buttons. Level 4 also introduces the idea of changing the plane on which Ida is walking, as there are points when you can make her walk on the sides and underneath certain monuments throughout the game. Eventually, you enter through a door, where you once again meet the Queen. The Queen refers to Ida as a thieving princess, and questions why she has returned to the Monument Valley. In Chapter 5, The Spire, we are introduced to the game's only real antagonists, the Crow People. The Crow People often block Ida's path and will not move until she does, making reaching certain areas very difficult. They move on a set path, so puzzles will often involve walking past at the right time or moving them to another area. For example, you can see here how you have to get the crow to walk to this area so that you can flip the stairs and walk up them. This level's design is pretty amazing, featuring a large handful of different locations, rather than just sticking to one or two like the previous levels. The 6th chapter begins in a strange, dark place, where Ida is faced by 3 totems. As you approach, a 4th, yellow totem with a moving eye rises from beneath Ida. This is the totem, Ida's only companion on her journey, a sentient pillar which you are able to move through the environment. Ida and the totem rise above the dark area to find themselves in a new, brighter location, shrouded in fog. Here, you learn how to use the totem. Ida can stand on top of the totem in order to reach high places, and the totem can activate buttons when it is moved on top of them. This means that the game can now incorporate puzzles where 2 pressure-sensitive buttons have to be pressed at the same time in order to be activated, such as this puzzle, where both Ida and the totem must activate 2 buttons simultaneously to progress. At the end of this level, however, Ida finds herself outside of a great wall, facing the ocean. As the platform she stands on begins to move forwards, the totem breaks through the wall and follows her. But the water is too deep, and it begins to sink until it no longer can be seen. Our only companion has already been ripped away from us. Ida is left, once again, alone. At the beginning of level 7, Ida is nowhere to be seen. Instead, there is a crow walking back and forth, who we have to direct towards a button. Upon pressing the button, Ida reappears and we can continue with the level. The main focus of level 7 is using the crows to our advantage. By changing the path they're walking on, we can trigger certain actions that help to progress the puzzles. Later on, Ida once again meets with the Queen. The Queen reveals that it was the Crow People who stole the sacred geometry. Now they are cursed to forever walk the abandoned monuments, forgetting who they truly are. The Queen questions if Ida has also forgotten. The final section of this chapter is one of my favourite design puzzles in the entire game. The use of colour and perspective really stands out here. My actual favourite level design, however, is Chapter 8, The Box. The Box is an incredibly creative level that plays with perspective and space in an entirely new way. When you first open the box, you once again have to direct a crow to stand on a button, which activates one of the 4 lights on top of it. However, when you open the box from the other side, you are presented with an entirely different interior, and opening it from the top reveals yet another. When you open the top of the box from the other side, you finally are greeted by Ida. The box is a self-contained puzzle which must be solved across the multitude of alternate interiors. This level has some of the most ingenious designs in the entire game. Why have multiple structures when they can all be hidden inside one box? The box really takes the idea of totally impossible geometry and runs with it, such as these fish, who are floating in water that is seemingly totally unaffected by any concept of gravity. Chapter 9 opens on an island in the middle of a vast ocean. At the top of this rocky outcrop lays a bright red flower, which Ida can pick up. When Ida picks up the flower, the sea level begins to lower, and Ida can walk down the structure, revealing more and more of it as she progresses. Eventually, the sea level lowers enough that we can see an old friend return once again, the totem. Eventually, the entire island is revealed, and the storm begins to clear. Ida enters a door into what appears to be some sort of temple, seemingly inspired by the ancient Egyptians. When she reaches the bottom, she begins to descend into a vast cavern, descending down small tunnels lit only by candlelight. When the last platform lowers, we see a white bird wearing a crown, mirroring Ida's movements. We can't see the path Ida is on, and must use the bird to navigate down it. Further down, Ida once again meets the queen. She tells of how the sacred geometry was the downfall of her people, and now all that remains is these monuments. When Ida finally reaches the bottom, she is met with a room of graves, seemingly stretching on forever, with one on a raised platform in the center. In every level up until now, the level is completed by Ida taking a shape from her hat and laying it on one of these platforms. But here, she simply takes the red flower and rests it beside the stone coffin. In the final level, Ida has to complete a number of different puzzles in order to activate 3 lights in this central spinning cube structure. Whilst none of the game's puzzles are seemingly grounded in reality, Level 10's puzzles are bizarre and appear as though they are floating in space above the cube. Once all 3 lights are activated, the level can be completed as normal. You return to the menu screen, which starts rapidly spinning to reveal Ida standing in the center, surrounded by the crow people. A great blue light comes down and begins shooting out beams to all of the crone people, transforming them back into the colorful birds they once were. Finally, the light strikes Ida, transforming her into the white bird we saw in the previous chapter, and that's where the game ends. Monument Valley is a masterpiece, at least in terms of mobile games. It's a game that tells a story of redemption, of forgiveness, and of finding your true self, and it does so with some of the most beautiful presentation imaginable. Although it takes only around an hour to complete, it utilizes color, geometry, sound, and level design in ways very few games have, and for that I can definitively say that it's one of the greatest mobile games of all time. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and liking the video. I've also got some new videos up on my second channel right now where I play through Monument Valley's 2 DLCs, so if you'd like to check them out, they're linked in the description. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you whenever I next decide to upload.